don't let it pass you by. Lift your hands to the heavens, lift your voice to the sky. Praise the Lord of all creation, let his name be lifted high.
Hey, check. Yeah. Whoa. If there's one thing I know, hey, yeah, God is good all the time. If he ain't, then you lying in the rain, in the shine. God is good all the time. God is good all the time. If he ain't, then you lying in the rain, in the shine. God is good all the time. Okay, some days be the best, some days be the worst, some days stay on replay, other days they don't. Oh well, okay. Guess what? You woke up today, put a big smile on your face. This one thing ain't never gonna change. God is good all the time. If he ain't, then you lying in the rain, in the shine. God is good all the time. God is good all the time. If he ain't, then you lying in the rain, in the shine. God is good all the time. It ain't one thing he can't do. Took my old ways, got me feeling brand new. Oh, hey, okay, look, make sure that it's understood.
Okay, for the summertime, how you been too good? Popped out that grave like I popped up that hood. Popped out that chain when I popped out that book. Say that one name, watch a demon get shook. Hopped out that pot and we let him cook. Lucy need a chill cause he don't run this, my dog. You can see we living in abundance, my dog. Lies from the snake, had to punch it, my dog. Had to punch it, my dog. God is good, God is great, thank you for this play. Pray the Lord, take my soul to the heaven gate. Take care, I would do the race like I caught a case. When I ain't got nothing left, you a call away.
God is good all the time. If he ain't, then you lying in the rain, in the shine. God is good all the time. God is good all the time. If he ain't, then you lying in the rain, in the shine. God is good all the time. God is good all the time.
Dancing around the truth, sometimes it's just black or white. Lord, I need you now, I'm struggling here tonight. And the wind and the waves, they crash in the lightning, and a storm just carries on through the night. If it starts to fall apart, no, I'm trying. Made some mistakes, but I'm still alive. When I feel stuck and hope just fades, and the dreams I hear go in my head, will you be there with me? Hey, will you get me out the way? I don't wanna take the leap if I'm taking it all alone. I know
Good morning, everybody. Come on in. I know there are donuts out there. They're hard to walk away from, but we are starting. Thanks, Daniel. I got booed by Ryan Bondi, so your finger guns towards me just lift me right back up. Come on in or close the doors, one or the other, I guess. Have you guys ever been at like a conference or a retreat when they'll bring up somebody that's like really physically fit, and they'll have you stand up and do some stretches to help you wake up because you made poor decisions the night before? Usually it's staying up late. Other decisions could be made. I'm not sure. Well, those always make me feel bad. I'm not very flexible. So I thought I would invite my good friend Greg up here, and we would do some middle-aged guys leading you through some stretches. So, all right. I wrote them out here just so we wouldn't get confused what we got to do. Come on up if you can carefully do it. Middle-aged guys, there you go. All right, we did it. All right. Oh, they turned off? Okay. So, first thing you're going to want to do, all right, is groan while you stand up. So get on that groan while you do it. Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. This is some good middle-aged stretching. You guys are doing well. All right. All right, the first one, okay. Touch your thighs, okay? You got it? All right. Maybe some of you guys might even want to go down to the knee. Don't hurt yourselves, though. All right, all the way. I'm more of a mid-thigh guy myself. I don't want to, nobody's trying to hurt themselves up here. Okay, all right. Now, depending on how that felt, grab your back, okay? Let me stretch that. I'll give it a couple. All right, there we go. Oh. Lots of groaning throughout is encouraged. For some of it's required. All right. Now, we're going to maybe you might need a little bit of space here. Maybe do some gentle arm hugs, okay? Just kind of some of those. If you're thinking Michael Phelps, you're thinking the wrong thing. He can like touch him behind him, I think. I don't know. Just something with your arms. If you got bad shoulders, don't do arm circles. It makes it worse. That's what I've learned. He's warmed up. He's going to feel that later. All right. Now, we're gonna wrap up. I know several of you ate donuts. We're going to wrap up with just some nice belly rubs, all right? Help that digestion along. All right. Yes, Greg's going to now pick something up off the floor as our grand finale. Your jacket? Easy. Easy. You got it? There he is. All right. We might need some spotters here in a second. Somebody be ready. Do we have? All right, we'll move on. Okay, yeah, well, I'll warn Jay and Mike Smith not to step on you as they're coming up. So you guys can go ahead and have a seat. You made it. Didn't even spill his coffee. All right. Whew. Yes, I'm now going to invite up Jason Bennett and Mike Smith. They have a story for us, I believe. So.
All right. Yes. We have an opportunity. We are in an amazing space in Columbus here. This is the Vista Community Church, the hub, is it the hub or the Northwest hub? Either way, both ways good. One of the things that I have had the pleasure of interacting with Mike over the years is just to hear some stories that maybe don't always get out. And one of them is the story of where we're at right now, and then even his journey to this. And I think there's something that would be encouraging to all of us, inspiring, maybe even challenging. And so I just had a few questions and wanted to interview Mike regarding where we're at. So the first question, Mike Smith, is you planted your community church, Vista Community Church, I believe it was 18 years ago, Kim said? 2007. I don't do math there. What did your call as a church planter? So what did your call as a church planter look like, and where and when did that happen?
How did God call me to
Church plant.
church planting? It's not typical. I don't think. We were running about 2,500 at Heritage on the northeast side, and we decided to launch 3 churches at one time. We were very top-heavy leadership-wise, and that's which starts to become sometimes more conflicting than cooperative, because you just different visions, right? So we realized we just need to tip it over, spread it out, and so we were going to launch 3 churches. We had 2 leaders for the other 2 churches, but we didn't have a leader yet for the Dublin plant, and we were sitting in a room with really all the potentials. There might have been 10 or 12 men or women in that room. I was part of a 3-headed executive team at that point. We had a lead pastor and then 3 executive. And so it wasn't really normally part of my role to do a lot of directing of things. That was senior pastor. I was on the execution side. It's I don't care what hill we're going to climb. Just tell me what it is. We'll climb it. But for some reason, I spoke up in that moment, and I went around the room. I didn't anticipate this, but it was very clear why every other person in that room was not going to be the lead of that Dublin church plant. So it was we just made you the kids community pastor, right? You're not leaving, are you? No, and this guy's just semi-retired as a senior VP from AEP. You're not going to plant a church. No, okay. And went around, and it was okay, well, at least me. And I said, I'll do it if Mike Borst will do it, who was 10 years younger than me. I tend to tilt management, and he was an MDiv. And I said, okay, I'll do it if he'll do it. And our senior pastor, I don't know if you know Jim Zapay, or got to know him, he's a strong type A leader. He goes, great, we'll announce it this week. And I was like, okay, just assume for a moment that I'm married, which I am. I might want to discuss this at least. So give me a month, let me pray about it. Most of you know Tammy. Actually, maybe you know Tammy better. I'm around and typically known as Tammy's husband. This is what she said at the end of the month of praying. She said, I will always follow God wherever he leads. I will follow you wherever God is leading you. I absolutely 100% do want to go. And she said, but I can see it. So
yeah, thank you for sharing. You grew the church from the plant to a multi-site, and that was, we had the benefit of, a lot of people here have been in the Worthington campus, where your other multi-site was, for multiple years with conferences, including the Shark Tank edition that we did there. And then, what's that?
Super fun.
It was super fun.
Shark Tank was fun.
And one of the things that happened is you encountered the pandemic, which you were not alone in that, the whole world.
Yes, thus pan.
But what's interesting what I encountered, yes, is that a lot of leaders in churches, when they hit the pandemic, it was like preservation mode. How are we going to survive? How do we exist? And it was kind of like closing down the world to survive and get through it. And then I had conversations with you, and the thing that blew my mind is God was expanding your vision and your mind in that season with new ideas, new endeavors. And can you share a bit about what God was doing in that season for you?
Yeah. I think part of my reaction to that comes from experience, really. So I'm almost 60. I just tell people I'm 60 because I'm practically 60. And what is the difference between 59 and 60? Not a lot that I can tell. Things are breaking down. It's just weird to be like, anyway. But with that comes quite a bit of experience. I've been in ministry for 30 years. I got saved when I was 8. I've been following Jesus a long, long time. And I think because of that, I have learned, and my personality enjoys problems, weirdly. I love to see how God coordinates and works when something happens that's upsetting or troubling. So when the pandemic happened, my instant reaction was, oh, God is going to do something with this, whatever this turns out to be. So my mindset pretty quickly, maybe because of experiences, oh, this could be. Add to that, we were already having discussions about how we needed to re-envision the future church based on really national and somewhat global trends of, we're all at decline, church decline. So we had already been talking about how we needed to change the cutting edge of church, and that just accelerated that. It actually gave us opportunity to go, okay, well, it's going to be broken in half here, so when things start to resolve, let's not just come back to where we were. Does that even come close to answering?
Yeah, and the vision of Hub, that was a piece that began to get implemented over there. I know it's the name here, but there, can you talk about Hub?
Yeah, that's again, same concept. How does the church need to adapt to the culture to continue to be relevant? And maybe the add to that was, if we want to keep trying to do things at least somewhat similarly in terms of meeting spaces, and the financial model had to change. There was no way for the church at large to do the same things it was doing in the 80s and 90s. And so we knew that the financial model had to change, which we just ended up landing on. We're going to have to share that cost. And so the idea of not creating a church that's just for the church, but like some of you have noticed, we have the counseling center down there. That unfinished space on the back side of the commons will be a tenant space. The downstairs space, which I think they numbered for this conference like 130, that could end up being a tenant space as well. We need to share the cost as a part of the hub. And then the other one is just try to create more intersections at the local geographic space where we can be connecting with city, education space, business. So we're just trying to create intersections. Yeah.
It's good. And one of the other things that many of you may not know is that the Worthington campus was not the largest congregation of the multi-site.
True.
That was the smaller one. The bigger one was actually still housed in a high school, and that was more on this side of town.
Yeah.
And so there was always this vision of, we need to get a home for the other congregation. And I remember when you started saying, hey, there's this property that actually is pretty incredible, and you shared about this, and then it was a roller coaster of a story. And I love stories. Can you just share? Because what impacted me through this was, at your stage, you have all the ability, all the reasons to just take your foot off the gas and coast. Enjoy what you've built, enjoy where you're at, and you felt God is moving you forward in vision, and we're not going to slow down. We're going to keep advancing. And the journey of faith that you had here, I think, is super powerful and challenging and encouraging. So can you just share, how did you get here?
Yeah. Along with maybe the construct in my psyche that says problems and difficulties and challenges are God's going to do something in that space. The other thing is, I also know that moving into that space, I don't have to I'm going to go through the ringer. Like, I know that. Like, we've been looking for a space like this for 8 years. In Dublin, there is just nothing that checked all 3 boxes for us as long as we looked. To at least 20,000 square feet. That wouldn't create a hub, but we would have a place where they could meet. Because what happened was the high school was very accommodating to us for 11 years. Then the pandemic struck, and we got moved out of that, and then they changed their policies when we couldn't come back to it. So there was no permanent place for 70% of our congregation. And so we needed at least 20,000 square feet. We needed at least 200 parking spots, and we needed to be zoned for religious use. And we couldn't find any of those three. You could find two, but the parking was the main thing. This 500 parking spaces back here is insane. But when this popped onto the market, it was like, oh my gosh. But I've been through 2 or 3 of these, and I immediately got sick to my stomach, and I'm like, oh, geez. I know this is gonna, I'm a little tired at almost 60 of having to continue to learn how to lead. I know any kind of pioneering type leadership, you're moving into new spaces, just means you're gonna fail in public. Y'all are aware of this, right? So it's like, oh, Lord, I don't really want to do this. I don't know how to do this. We don't know how to do this. Here we go. Short story is this process, which should have taken 6 months, took 2 years, and it was dead in the water at least 3 times, maybe 4. I could tell you about those things, but those were super, like, discouraging, because here was the reality. What I knew, maybe more intimately than anybody else, was if we didn't get this building, we would lose both buildings. There was no way we could continue to sustain this congregation. It had been in decline ever since the pandemic, and after the pandemic, and not having a place, people were just drifting away to more stable situations. We did not have a place. So here, our main 70% of our giving just continues to decrease. They're subsidizing that building. If we don't get this building, it's going to keep going, and we'll lose both. So it's very trying times. You're making decisions in the middle of those spaces that feel like very binary, like we're either going to survive or we're going to die. Like that was what it felt like, at least 3 or 4 times. So I felt personally like, okay, well, this is over. You know, it's not going to happen. It's very difficult ups and downs. But we persevered. We just kept saying, until it is absolutely impossible, we have got to keep trying. And God just came through in ways we couldn't have anticipated each one of those times. And then we finally, again, I don't know if I'm answering your questions. But
You absolutely answered it. No, that was great.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm talking.
Yeah. Well, there's this concept of like the theology of place or the theology of space. Like, maybe I'm off on this, but Jesus was the bread of life. People say Bethlehem was the bread house or the bake house. I find that comical that the bread of life was born in the bake house. And there's like a missional reality to this whole thing. And just to hear, like, we're meeting here, but to hear the story of what God did, how God worked in your life, and then the vision of what you're trying to do out of here, I think is inspiring for all of us and challenging, because we're all going to be encountering consistent need to grow in leadership and run into challenges or places where we're like, I don't know if this is going to work. And to just be challenged by inspired by your faith. Go ahead.
One of the most rewarding things, and I would encourage you to think about opportunities to do this, it was an idea that popped in my head out of nowhere that we did. Within a few weeks of when we finally got into the building, which was Easter this year, I invited every person that was involved in us getting into the building that was not a part of the church. So an architect, the seller of the building. I got to know him. His Lindsay Honda owned this building. They're the biggest Honda seller in Columbus, maybe bigger even regionally. But they have a very kingdom mindset here in the city. They do a lot of benevolent work with the money they have. And they came a long way in the price point. That was one of the places we were totally dead. And they came down dramatically to help us. Like, they got engaged with our vision. It was incredible. So I had the owner here. I had our lawyers here. I had our architect here. Had a number of people like that. And it was super, like, cool for them to, like, actually be in a space that they were part of having come about. And we had a structural engineer. I'm going to tell you this story real quick. Structural engineer. So getting through all these hurdles, the unexpected. The last one was about a month before we were supposed to get in here. The city did an inspection, and they told us that this building was not structurally sound for the use that we had it for. That was the news I got. Yeah. we can't actually, there's a bunch of coding reasons. We actually can't meet downstairs for a reason I don't want to go into. We have to be up here. So if it's not structurally sound, we actually couldn't use the building as a church. So I got that news and I sent a text to my architect that I'm not super proud of today. But this is what I said. Did you build me a boat that does not float? You get what I'm saying? Like, the architect, that's a big thing. Is it structurally sound? And it actually was. It was. It worked out. But we didn't know that for about 3 weeks. I found that out. I'm driving here. I pull into the parking lot because there was a meeting going on, and there was a guy walking around the parking lot on his phone, which happens here. There's like a businesses on either side, and people just come and walk around thing. And there was a guy walking around on his phone. And I went over to him because he came up near the door, and I introduced myself to him. And it was interesting, like he had some connection in the church. I think his daughter or son was dating. Oh wait, it's in Cincinnati. Is it Matthew? Who's the architect at Cincinnati, a student? Or is anybody from Grant? Who are the 3 people from Vista that are? Matthew Johnston. It was his dad. His dad, and I'm connected with him going, oh yeah, you're dating Mary Proctor. Anyway, he goes, oh, it's nice to meet you. What's going on? I said, well, I just found out that my da-da-da. He goes, I'm a structural engineer. I work right next door right here. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I just got the news that it was structurally sound, and there was a guy walking around in my parking lot who was a structural engineer. And he did pro bono work with his shop to do all that we needed to do, and just one of those things. That was one of the places where it was like dead in the water, and I get to tell the story. And then there was crazy. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yes, I'll say this. I think the purpose of this segment was that many of you, God has dreams and vision in your life, and you're going to run into places where it just seems dead, and God can make a way when there seems to be no way.
Yeah.
And we're here as a result. So Thank you.
Thank you.
And schedule, am I still on? All right, I'm on. I am going to make one unilateral decision because I have no idea how long that time took because I failed to look at a clock. So whatever time we need for you to take to get through your time, we're going to do that, and then we'll move on after that.
Sounds great. Spoiler alert, I guess. Thanks, Jay. Point it over at Lori. She's going to come back up. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've had our bodies stretched, right, a little bit. Maybe our faith stretched. And I'm excited for Lori to continue to stretch our hearts and our minds. So please welcome Lori back up.
Thanks, guys. I'm so glad to be back with you all. It's been great. Like, after speaking yesterday, my favorite comments were from you guys being like, can we just be friends? I feel like I know you, and I feel like I know you. And yes, I want to be your friend. So I hope by the end of today, we continue to feel that friendship through the Spirit, even as we're talking about super challenging things. But Mike, I just wanted to say thank you for what you just shared. That ministered to me, especially what you said on as you're growing as a leader, it's so hard to fail publicly over and over. And I've been in this space for 10 years, and by the grace of God, there's not like moral failure or anything, but every time God calls me into a new space, he's calling me more into the parenting space, and I just get like scared as I'm like, but I'm not gonna do it perfectly. So thank you for saying that. And it actually reminded me of last night, how we were talking about how the purpose of our lives is to push back the darkness and usher in the light. That's what you guys are doing. And this N.T. Wright quote came to me, and I think about it so often as I'm in my particular pushing back the darkness space. And I thought about it for you guys as you're in your specific spaces. And he says this in Simply Good News: real and lasting change is costly. The principalities and powers that have run the world in their destructive fashion for so long won't release their deadly grip without a struggle. If you're feeling the struggle of the rulers and principalities that have gripped this world for too long, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. You're probably doing it and leaning in exactly right. But it's hard, isn't it? It's hard. I see you. Today, we're going to talk about the heart of the LGBTQ conversation and the focus of it. Can I just give you this? The focus of it today, the parts that we're going to lean into are, we're going to start with the heart. Then we're going to lean into our eyes, how we view LGBTQ people and LGBTQ culture. And then we're going to go to our mouth. How can we specifically engage LGBTQ people? Now, before I dive exactly in, I do understand that when I say LGBTQ people generally today, I am talking about people who perhaps do not know Jesus and identify as LGBTQ. But I have no doubt that there's people in this room who identify as LGBTQ or same-sex attracted or say they experience and do experience gender dysphoria, and you love Jesus. And you're surrendering that part of you to Jesus. That's also me. I don't tend to use LGBTQ language for myself in particular, but I will use it if it helps me to get inroads, missional inroads with other people who identify as LGBTQ. So that's just my personal preference. So I'm just more, I like to say I experience attractions toward the same sex, or I don't know, this is obnoxiously long, but if I struggle with lust, it's toward women. If you really want to know that. But I'll use whatever language helps me to earn the relational equity to talk heart to heart. We're going to talk more about that. But we're going to begin 3 ways to winsomely and truthfully. I know, we need to all do the wave when we hear winsomely. Winsomely, yay! And truthfully, maybe make a tea or something, I don't know. Yeah, oh my gosh, you guys are the best. You work with college students. You make them do weird stuff too, don't you? Thank you. Truthfully, engage LGBTQIA people. So the first thing that we need to remember is to know that it always comes back to the heart. Do you know the word heart or cardia is in the Bible 729 times? I actually found another stat that says closer to 1,000, but whatever, between 700 and 1,000 times. And it is never about the blood pumping organ in your chest. The heart is our decision maker, the affective center of our being, or the desire producer that makes us tick. It's our chooser. It's how we view the world. This is our heart, our cardia. This is how I like to share my story, is through the lens of the heart with something called core needs. We are going to have access, by the way, to all these slides. So you're welcome to take pictures. Yay, right? So for those of you who are furiously taking notes, I used to be very precious about my slides. Now I just don't care. You go share them widely. Go love. If you want to cite me, great. But this is God's stuff. And I'm happy to share it with you as you need it. But here's how I like to tell my story. I'm actually going to fast forward to this heart map, which I'm pretty sure when I see Jesus someday, he's going to be like, hey, Lori. Hey, Jesus. I love you. Aw, Lori, you're so cute. Thanks, Jesus. So anyway, you tried to map the heart, huh? Yeah. So this is imperfect heart map. But this was so helpful. This sort of language and vision and a visual was really helpful for me when I was trying to figure out my own sexual brokenness. Because all I could see was sin, and say Jesus probably hates me, and I couldn't understand what Paul says in Romans 7, why do I do what I don't want to do? Let's talk about that, huh? Okay. I was born at a very young age. Thank you for laughing. My one dad joke. With what I like to call core needs. I just referenced those. I didn't invent core needs. Many people talk about them, about these primary needs that we have inside our heart. These are 10 of them that we have here, are what my husband and I have compiled over the last decade or so of what we see as primary needs before the fall. You were created good and needy. to be needy is not a sin. God created you to be complete in Him, with people and creation supporting this God need meeting process to give Him glory. Let me give you a for example of some of how you can feel some of this neediness in you. Yeah, you're in the middle. And then there's a second group of people who get hit in the face with the dodgeball. Yes, you are my people. This is like an out group, in group. Anyway, we'll play later. We'll see you on the court in the 500 parking lot space. What's the main thing of the sport? Oh, okay, shh. I know. There's a homing device on my face since I was young. Okay, listen, people who get hit in the face, it comes right to your nose, and then when you get hit in the nose, what makes you do? Cry. They cry, and then you laugh at us. Rude. I hate dodgeball for that reason, because I'm the person who gets hit in the face. But I love being picked first for dodgeball. I want to be chosen. Don't you? But so often when we feel this desire to be chosen or affirmed, my little kids, 10, 8, and 5, they color a picture and they bring it up to me and they're like, Mom, this just happened this morning. She drew a lighthouse. Juliet, Mom, do you see this lighthouse? She has this in her good desire to be affirmed. If I had seen her lighthouse that she had shown up on FaceTime and I had just been like, lighthouse. I've been like a terrible parent, right? Call CPS on me. But that's a good desire. That's an echo of Eden where we see God say to creation, it is good, it is good, it is good. Desired, it says in Ephesians and Psalms, before I knew the world, before I created the world, I saw you. And I chose you as my own. Those are good desires that get filtered through our sin nature. So often when we feel this neediness, we can do a few different things. We can become a stoic. Yes, I need to be affirmed, but I don't need to be affirmed. I'm a good Reformed Christian who doesn't have needs. I go to a Reformed church, so it's fine. I can make fun of me. No needs, no needs. You also have to have a British accent if you're stoic. No. Or we can become the addict where I need to be affirmed. I need to be seen. I need to be chosen for dodgeball first. Hopefully that's not you because you're the needy friend. Or we can learn how to be, the old language is a Christian mystic, or learn how to sit in the ache of the already not yet of God. I have these needs. Do you see and know me and love me? And when creation or when people see us and know us and love us, because we're dependent on God to meet those needs, we are able to look through them, not to them, to the one who ultimately sees and knows and loves us, and we can give him thanks. We can worship him when people echo his seeing and knowing and loving of us. That's the ideal. But we have this sin nature that all of our needs get filtered through. So we have these natural to us defaults, predispositions, or orientations, if you will, to get the good needs of our heart met in ways that don't actually satisfy and don't glorify God. We're all born that way. So when I was born at that very young age, I had these good needs, some of the primary ones to be seen and known and loved, and I took them to church-acceptable sinful ways, idolatrous ways of people-pleasing and performing. But then I also felt from a very young age these attractions toward the same sex, which is kind of weird to say the word attraction when you're like 5. But I just thought girls were more intriguing than boys were. Boys were like my 5 brothers. I have 11 siblings, by the way. Are there any other big families in the audience? What? How many siblings you got? Oh, no lie. Okay, thank you for sharing. Anyone other big families? Yeah, how many siblings you got? 5. What number are you? Number 1. See, we don't have names, we have numbers. That's how I knew to ask that. I'm number 9. Did you have a 15-passenger van? How deep did you roll? No. Yeah. I used to pretend with our 15-passenger van, I used to be like, maybe it's actually cool, like a limo. No, it's not cool. It's not like a limo, no. Where am I? Okay, so I have these attractions toward the same sex. Okay. Guys were not intriguing, but girls were. And so when I felt these attractions toward the same sex growing up in 80s and 90s, moral majority, evangelical America, where the language around LGBTQ was the homosexual agenda that is going to come and destroy America and families. I wasn't like, oh, this is my version of sexual brokenness. I need to surrender to the lordship of Christ, like everyone else is called to do. No. You shut that mess down. And I fast forward to college where I'm going to a Christian university and I meet another woman who starts as my friend, and what started as a friendship ended up in a secret same-sex relationship. And I remember coming to a church similar to this one, sitting in front, weeping, wondering 2 things. God, do you love me or do you actually hate me and want to squish me and start over with a good straight girl like I know you actually want? And is there anywhere safe in the church I can talk about this? Because back then, this is early 2000s, the era I like to call of porn and pancakes. Oh, bear with me. Let me explain. So in the early 2000s, it was like this huge surge. I think there was a 90% increase since 2000 of porn use, which again, we talked about that last night. But XXX Church, there was all these people coming out and saying, we need to do something about this problem. And so they would incentivize heterosexual men, specifically, that was their target audience, to come Saturday morning, to incentivized by pancakes, to talk about their porn addiction. And so these guys would go, and I'm sure that it was really helpful, and they were able to find brotherly camaraderie, love, and they were able to help each other. But then Sunday morning, they would share their testimony in front of everyone. And I would hear it, and I'd be like, oh, we're allowed to talk about sexual sin, huh? But then they would get off stage, and I would hear them make fun of effeminate men and more masculine women and talk about homosexuals out there as if the ground really isn't level at the foot of the cross. I thought at a minimum it would be level for sexual sinners, but seemed like no. So I ended up where many LGBTQ people end up, suicidal. Because I thought in order to be a Christian and love Jesus meant I had to be straight, and I didn't know how to be straight. I remember sitting in church, crying, worshiping, and like looking down at my body and being like, where's the gay part? Is it like my appendix? Can I cut it out? I would have. So it's like if the church is saying, Lori, in order for you to be a good Christian, you need to be straight, and I don't know how to be straight, so then that must mean in order for me to be a good Christian, I should kill myself. Because they're saying that's the only way to exist here is actually to not exist, because you can't exist as you are with your version of sexual sin. What? Or, here's the other siren song in my head. I come out as a lesbian atheist. So to be a Christian, I must die. Or I come out as a lesbian atheist, and at least I'm alive, and I'm going to feel seen and known and loved somewhere. Who will save me from this life of sin and death? Thank God someone came alongside me in that time. I actually reached out to her because a friend who I was telling about my suicidal ideation, she's like, yeah, you should probs not want to kill yourself. I was like, oh, good point. And I went to therapy. And her name was Carol, and she's given me permission to share this. But she did not just know therapeutic interventions, and she did not know just Leviticus 18 and beat me over the head with it. She knew God. And she knew the deeper needs beneath my wants. And she understood I had these good needs that were getting filtered through my sin, the experience. Let me walk you through this, and then I'll walk you through how she walked with me. My experiences of being with my girlfriend, I actually felt seen and known and loved with her, but then I also felt seen and known and loved with God at times. So then that led to a conflict in my belief system. What do I believe about God and my girlfriend? And I don't even know where I can wrestle with this. That leads to emotional turmoil, which leads to behaviors. How do I cope with this dissonance inside? I go back to my girlfriend who makes me feel good. If you place your story in this heart map, I bet you can see your own sin cycles. Good needs filtered through sin. Emotional turmoil, go back to sin. Who will save us from this life of sin and death? Next verses. Thank God the answer is Christ Jesus our Lord. I go to Carolyn. I share with her everything I'm wrestling through. I even share how angry I am at the church for stinking at knowing how to walk with someone like me. And I felt so ashamed. I didn't know I could say that. I thought I deserved the hatred I was feeling from the church because I'm the worst sinner, right? And as she and I started to develop relational equity over time, she would ask me questions like this. Lori, when you envision the ideal perfect woman, what are you picturing? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you that. You're like 65. That's weird. But HIPAA, you know HIPAA, that prevents her from telling anyone. So what did I have to lose? So I told her. And I was shocked that what came tumbling out of my mouth were not sexual words. They were core need words. I want to be seen and known and loved. And she looked me in the eye, which is the antidote to shame. She said, Lori, those are good needs. You're just running to the wrong place. Now, the right place is not to a dude. If I was to take all my big box of neediness and then bring it to a boy, like, here, fix me. You break up with that girl. You don't date her. You're running. But I was smarter than Carolyn. I knew where she was going. I'm a Christian. It's like, yeah, well, don't say Jesus, because I am like a super Christian, and so no. I hear the pride. In retrospect, I hear the pride. But she looks at me and she's like, well, the answer is Jesus. Don't hurt me. But what she knew that I didn't know was I had a lot of barriers between those good needs of my heart and the need meter of my soul. Yes, I had sexual sin to confess, but I also had some grief about the church that I needed to lament. I had some forgiveness to do of my enemies that I didn't know were my enemies. Church people. And as I started to grieve and forgive and ask God for love for my enemies, I found it made room for more of the love of God in my own heart. There's a beautiful sermon by Thomas Chalmers, an 18th century Scottish minister, and it's titled, The Expulsive Power of a New Affection. You heard of it? The sermon itself is like pretty heady. Honestly, if you read it, it's like, okay, you're smarter than me. But the title itself tells you what's in it. The expulsive power of a new affection. There are deeper loves that have the power to expel all lesser loves. That's God. So as I started to remove some of these barriers between the needs in my heart and the need meter of my soul through lament and forgiveness and love for my enemies and confession of sin, I found myself growing in deeper love and experiencing the love of God, as Paul talks about in Ephesians 3. Do you know what the love of God does? Like a billion trillion things. But he says in there, may you know this love, though it is so great, you will never fully understand it. But then you will be filled with the fullness, need meeting, of life and power that comes from God. God's love empowers us to die to self daily. That's what Carolyn taught me, and that's what I've been doing ever since. We're going to pause for a hot second. I want you to process this for a minute with a friend next to you. How do you see yourself in this heart map? I'm going to pull it back. Take a minute. I know it's a lot. Digest it, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Take some water.
Is this Thomas Chalmers?
Yeah, Explosive Power of a New Affection.
No.
No? What? I had it in
Is that
mind.
him?
I don't know. I don't know if that's him. I don't know if he looks like that.
I need another picture. I just bought a tractor. This is gonna sound so funny. Where I just got a tractor, and it's made by Alice Chalmers.
Oh, funny.
The guy before him who started it.
Yeah, was that Thomas?
Chalmers.
Look up The Explosive Power of a New Affection. See if it's the same guy.
Oh, he's from Mike.
Oh, probably.
Sorry. But no, it's funny to make the connection
Yeah.
of entrepreneurialism
Oh,
and
yeah.
The kingdom of God. It may not be him, but
That's hilarious. Thanks, man. With the dodgeball. We're vibing all the time, always vibing. Really? Yeah, see? All right. Would anyone have the courage to share a reflection from that? Would anyone have the courage to share any reflection from what you just heard? Because if we can really apply this, this is going to change not just our thinking, but how we're actually living and interacting with people. Is there one or two people? Is anyone willing to say, oh, this made me think about this about my life? Yeah, thank you. What's your name? Anna. Can you say it loud and proud for us to hear? Thank you. Yes. Yep. 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 Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it's not. Okay, so here, I'm going to restate for those of you who didn't hear it. Tell me if I'm not restating correctly. So Anna said sometimes she's feeling this deep need to be taken care of. So one of those needs in there, to be nurtured perhaps. And she will go to a Christian book that's not like smutty necessarily. It's just like a Christian book where she sees a strong male character taking care of a female character. And so she said, I'm curious how you pivot to Jesus. How can, when creation meets these needs, how can it become worship to God as opposed to this consumptive, addictive heart? Yeah? Great question. Thank you for the example. Here's where you go is you start noticing. If we can back it up, my husband's a licensed mental health therapist. He says 50 to 80% is awareness. So if you can, when you're like, what am I feeling? Even asking yourself, what am I feeling, is like a marathon run, is just of even awareness. What am I feeling? I'm feeling empty inside. I want to go look at something, eat something, talk to someone. Before you do that, go, Jesus, I'm feeling this right now. Do you see me? Do you choose me? Do you nurture me like no one and nothing else can? That's not going to make it go away, probably. Maybe it can. Maybe he'll just download a verse to you and you're going to be like, oh, that was easy. Help me, Lord. Help me to think of God-honoring ways to get this need met that I don't consume, but are glory to you. So you could read that book after doing that, and you're reading it, you're like, oh, God, thank you that this is an example of how you see and know and love me. Then reading that book is nurture and glory to God. Does that help a little bit? The pausing and asking is going to change your heart posture for whatever activity you do, from idolatry, is the word we could say here, to worship. Now, there's some things you could do that would always be sin, that cannot be worship, such as pornography, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, I said we're going to start with the heart. Then we're going to go to our lens. How can we love LGBTQ people, as I pray and hope, as Jesus does? I say, consider using the language as the Spirit leads. Rah-rah. This is like the most controversial part of the whole conversation, is people get really antsy about, do I use pronouns? Do I not use pronouns? Do I use LGBTQ language? Do I not use LGBTQ language? I used to make this like a minor part of the talk. Let's just talk about it. Also, I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm going to give you some ideas, some lenses to think about it, okay? I'm saying consider using it as the Spirit leads. First, we're going to talk about why, missiological precedent. If you were to tell me today, Lori, I'm going to go to another country. I don't speak their language. I have no idea about their customs. I'm just going to go jump on an airplane. I'm going to jump off, and I'm going to scream at them, not love is love, God is love. And you do that. And you come back, and you're like, oh my gosh, Lori, no one came to Christ. It's their fault. And I would say, no, honey. You got to take some ownership here. I see a similar thing happening when it comes to engaging LGBTQ culture, which it is a culture. They have artifacts, flags, value system, and not all of it is like dripping in sin. Have you been to a pride event? Some of it is pretty raunchy. Some of it is like Meijer, the grocery store, is there. And they're just like trying to care for families. Yes, you've got the drag show. Yes, I've seen literal Satan worship. And there's people who genuinely love and respect each other and are not doing the drag show or Satan worship. There's a culture. So how do we engage culture? Here's a story time. This is my friend Kat on the left. This is my husband Matt on the right. Kat and Matt with a hat and a bat. And a rat. Kat is precious. I just actually spoke with her this weekend. But when I first met Kat in church, do we have story time? Do we have enough time for a story? Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. We were going to the same church, and let's just say this sentence. We just say this out loud. God is always at work. God is always at work in every single person's life that you know. Even the most Satan worshipful person that you know. I've interviewed someone, if you listen to our podcast, where he was at a pride parade where someone was the head of the Satan booth. She came to Christ because of him that day. God is always at work. When I met Kat, I met her in church, but before I met her, she had been in serial dating relationships with women for 10 years. Before that, she was going to a conservative Baptist church. She said bye-bye at 18, 28 years old. She's going to propose to her girlfriend, and she's considering transitioning to male. Didn't know that. Also didn't know that several months before, she had been thinking about, how do I want my life to look in the future? And what came to her mind is, I actually want my wife and our future kids to be involved in church. They go to a mega church. Kat could not sing in the beginning, but then the Holy Spirit overwhelmed her. And during the song, No Longer Slaves, do you know that one? The Holy Spirit put a finger on just how scared Kat was. And he didn't shame her, and he didn't say, yeah, because it's your dumb gay lifestyle, you dumb. He said, I see you, and I love you, and I actually can remove your fear. And she cried for the first time in 10 years. I didn't know that. She leaves that mega church because she wanted something more intimate. She comes to a church similar to this one, and I'm sitting in the back, and I notice she'll come in late, and she'll be holding hands with her girlfriend, and I had been starting this ministry, and I've got 2 little kids, and the Holy Spirit puts a finger on my heart and says, hey, Lori, hi, you're cute, thanks. That's how I just feel like that's how he warms me up, to get me to do stuff like this, because it's hard. Thanks, God. Hey, so you know how you talk about LGBT stuff from the stage? You're welcome. Pride, I hear it again in retrospect. Yes, God, yes, I do. Hey, you don't get to just do that from the stage. I want you to do this in real life too. Dang it. You see that girl up there? With her girlfriend? I want you to go talk to her. So like the obedient child of God that I am, I prayed about it for a month. And then I went up to her, and I was like, okay, what do I say? I'm Googleable. Hey, my name's Lori. What's your name? My name's Kat. What's your girlfriend's name? Because to meet her girlfriend is not to be like, I love sin. It's just loving another image bearer of a holy God. Nice to meet you. Hey, I noticed that you come in late sometimes. I want you to know that I'm going to save a seat for you and your girlfriend. And I want you to know that you can sit with me and my family whenever you want. And it was important for me to say, and my family, because there's a stereotype of LGBTQ people that they're like all predators, and that's not true. I think we need to be suspicious, have caution, maybe not give all trust to anyone in ongoing, unrepentant sexual sin. We need to have some caution, but we can always love. I want you to know you can sit with me and my family. And then she asked me what I did for a living. Well, trying to bridge the gap between LGBTQ people and the church. And by the grace of God, she wasn't turned off by that. And by the grace of God, she actually did go home and Google me. And by the grace of God, she didn't think I was crazy. But I didn't know this part either, that she had just started going to see a therapist at her secular university to ask questions about her gender dysphoria. She was considering if she should transition, and she thought this therapist would push back on her a little bit. So she goes in self-diagnosing and saying, hey, I think I'm a guy inside, and I think I might want to transition. And she thought they would lovingly ask questions of her. This is before she's following Jesus and she wants to transition, but she wanted someone to love her enough to ask hard questions. Instead, she was met with, tell me when you want to start testosterone. And that did not feel very loving to her. So then she meets this crazy lady on a Sunday morning and says, exasperated, I'm so tired as I am. I want to know what God says. Me? You guys, an Odyssey, Adventures in Odyssey episode. Hey nerds, we're still vibing. Adventures in Odyssey is a Christian radio drama, if you don't know what I'm talking about. I don't give a stamp of approval to every episode, but come on, it's kind of funny. Like, you couldn't script that, right? Because what did I say? God is always at work. I didn't force her to talk to me. God was prompting her. And so we start meeting together. And I just spoke with her recently, and she said one of the most helpful things of when I started meeting with her is she's like, I don't know what God says. And I said, you know what? I'm not exactly sure either. I had a sense that God, I'm more clear now, to be honest. But back then, I was like, what you could say, even if you are very clear, is, you know, I would love to study this with you. Do you want to study this with me? See what God says? She loved that side-by-side posture, which that's how I view every LGBTQ person that I've walked with, and now I've walked with dozens and dozens and dozens, is we're all in this quest to push back the darkness and usher in the light. And here is an image bearer who is not my enemy, but who is someone I want to be part of the pushing back the darkness front lines. I'm not your mentor who I'm better than you and I'm running ahead. It's, come on, friend. God loves you and chose you and called you. Let's tell you who you truly are so we can do this thing together. She said she felt that in her bones. But we're talking about language. When I first met Kat, she didn't like her pronouns. She preferred they, them, or cat, which was a little grammatically challenging for me as an English major. But I did it. Because it's just a surface level thing for me. Now I know some of you are like, I feel like I'm lying, Lori, don't tell me what to do. I know, we'll get there. For me, it was an easy way for me to earn relational equity so I could talk deeper gospel things. Okay, I hear you. It's a pretty compelling story, Lori, I got you. Here's how I see, for those of you who are not convinced, and that's totally fine. I respect you, and I'm going to keep respecting you through the entire talk, okay? I respect if you're like, I can't do that. Anyone been to Holland, Michigan? Do you know what this is? What is it? Tunnel Park. Okay. Here's the analogy I like to use for something like, do I use pronouns? How do I use language? Tunnel Park is a park with a tunnel in it. On this side of the tunnel is a parking lot, is jungle gyms. It's like where it's like families are hanging out. But if you walk through the tunnel, it's like a completely different, for sake of analogy, culture. You have different dress, style, different things people are doing there. And when I think about engaging LGBTQ culture, and when I think about issues of pronouns and language, is I think about it in this sort of language, is this sort of view. If on this side, the parking lot, jungle gym side, is maybe where Christian evangelical culture is, who holds to a traditional view of marriage, okay? We'll be on this side for sake of analogy. On the other side is LGBTQ affirming culture. So this is where people are transition, they're married to people of the same sex. It's a different culture on that side. And let's say your 13-year-old comes out to you and is maybe a few steps down the road walking toward LGBTQ culture and is like, Mom, Dad, I think I'm this person. And you're standing here in the parking lot side and you're like, oh, honey, because you're still close enough. They've only walked a few steps. Oh, honey, I don't think that's who you are, but I would love, thank you for sharing. I really respect you. Can we talk about that for a minute? But you're close enough that you don't have to yell in order to get their attention, and you have enough relational equity, and they haven't quite adapted to the other culture yet that you could just kind of, can we just talk about that for a hot second? Can we just talk and let me help you understand what's going on? Well, let's say it's your uncle you haven't talked to in 10 years, who's now your aunt. She is on the other side. And you're sitting over here in a non-affirming Christian evangelical culture, and you're like, hey, that's not who you are. You think that they're going to listen to you? No, what do you need to do in order to have a conversation is something you missionaries know a lot. We got to incarnate. Incarnation is the theological term for the truth that the Son of God took human flesh, entered human culture, and lived as we live, but without sin. Similarly, missionaries are called to incarnate Christ in a new culture by understanding and adjusting to local realities and living out God's kingdom values. Is God calling you to incarnate to LGBTQ culture? Now, there's examples of Jesus knowing when to break culture in order to win a heart. We see Jesus doing this with the woman at the well. He should not have talked to her as a good Jewish rabbi. He should not have asked her for something to drink. According to rabbinical tradition, that was equal to eating the flesh of pigs. But Jesus knew exactly when to break cultural, not stereotypes, but cultural standards in order to reach a heart. So that's why I say use language as the Spirit leads. God might call you to say, hey, friend, I can't use that pronoun. Is there something else? I'm going to give you specific language that I could use. And that might be what that person actually needs to hear that day, because God is always at work. Or Jesus knew when to condemn culture. I got to be honest, this is the story of Jesus flipping tables. This gets quoted at me the most. And it bugs me. Because Jesus flipping tables was not about Jesus being so mad at sexual sinners. It was Jesus being frustrated that there were barriers for people to come to him. I'm just going to leave you with this, and then I'm going to give us some examples of, Lori, I still can't do it. I'm not going to use the pronouns. I'll give you some ways to handle that with respect. This is Christopher West. He's a Catholic guy. I love his theology of the body for beginners. It's a very condescending title, but I do love that book. I am a beginner. Thank you, Christopher. He's a student of Pope John Paul II's theology of the body, and he helps to really break down some of the metaphors that I've been sharing with you. But this is his book, God, Sex, and the Universal Longing. But he says this. He's talking about why was Jesus so tender with sexual sinners, the woman at the well, the woman caught in adultery? He's so tender with us. He says, the great sinners and the great saints, in fact, are made of the very same stuff. A mad, burning, aching, wild desire for ecstasy. That's intense. What's the difference? The great sinners head for the fast food, while the great saints have discovered the living hope of the banquet. That's the living in the tension of our knowing our neediness with the already not yet. That's the great saints can live in that tension. And this, it seems, helps explain why the great sinners are often the ones who become the great saints. They may have been eating from the wrong menu, but at least they're in touch with their hunger. So when the banquet shows up, they're often the first to recognize that that's what they've been looking for all along. We see that with the woman at the well, the woman caught in adultery, is they are so hungry and they find Jesus and they're saying yes. But what if you just can't? You're like, Lori, I love you. I just feel like if I would use their pronouns, I really am like breaking a commandment. I feel like I'm lying. I hear you and I truly respect you. And there's been situations where I can't do it because I feel that internal disconnect. Here's what I'd encourage you to do, because this is so easy to talk about in theory. You ever talk to someone to their face? Okay, so here's some options. What can we say in real life to real humans, imago Dei humans? Humbly ask, hey friend, this goes against my beliefs. Is it all right if I call you by your last name? There's an idea. Still their name. Use a nickname you prefer. This I wouldn't ask, I would just do this, because this is a little offensive. Can I avoid using pronouns? This is a person to be loved, not a person to argue into the kingdom. I did ask Kat later, if I had not used your pronouns, would you have ever even met with me a second time? And she just laughed. But these are options. I've done this before when I have felt conviction. How can I honor God if I choose to use their language, right? Because it isn't actually who they are. I would have a conversation. Hey, I actually believe God designed you as a female person. I don't believe that's who you truly are, but I'm willing to use this language because I love you and I want a relationship with you. I've said this to a real human person with whom I had deep relational equity, and it went well. If you don't really know the person, that's an intense sentence. If you know them, I've been shocked. If you model humility and they're willing to model humility, it's interesting how much you can find common ground. Or if you can't say that, you can think to yourself, I can use the language for now, knowing I'm on a journey with them. That ideally I want to walk them into alignment with their version of female or male, but that's maybe not today. Kat became okay with female pronouns about 2 to 3 years walking with her. Years. And when I was one of the first people she let use she, her pronouns, and I asked her, I said, Kat, why do you let me do that? And she said, because you understand me. When you say she, her, I don't feel like you have like the cookie cutter cut out with like the dress. And you're not like, she, her, you're a girl. She said, you understand the wrestle inside. Things to consider. Last part of this talk, we're going to talk about our mouths. Third way to talk heart to heart, to understand and love our LGBTQ people from the heart, is walk with ears open and mouth slow to speak. I started by asking this question: what emotion comes up for you when we're talking about this? If by the end of these sessions today and you see a rainbow flag or you see an LGBT person on TV and you feel your blood pressure rising to like an 11 out of 10, do not go be a missionary to LGBTQ people tomorrow. You need to figure out what's going on in here. You need someone to ask some questions. What's going on in your heart? Why are you so angry at them? Them who is a fellow equally broken image bearer. Even if they're shoving it down your throat, blah, blah, blah. We're supposed to love our enemies. Ask someone, why? Help me understand why I hate them. Listen for hopes and fears. So you're talking with someone, you're like, okay, Lori wants me to be able to earn the relational equity to talk heart to heart. This is what I'm always listening for. Listen for hopes and fears, and you're going to hear core needs. Por ejemplo. I don't know why I just switched to Spanish. West Michigan Spanish. Por ejemplo. I I remember early on in the journey with Kat, again, she's given me permission to share all this with you, or I would not share it. Early on in the conversation and walking with Kat, she was still wrestling with wanting to marry her girlfriend, and she said to me, Lori, I just want to get married. Now, for some of us conservative Christians, we'd be like, okay, well, bye-bye. I know what you're about. Bye-bye. I said, why? Why do you want to get married, Kat? Because I know underneath everything we run toward is a good need. Asking for God. Why, Kat? Why do you want to get married? And she said, oh, well, I just really want a honeymoon. Okay. That's also where good conservative Christians would just walk away. I know what you're about, but that's not me. Why, Kat? What is it about the honeymoon? Well, I'm really tired, and I really need a break. I didn't say right then, oh gosh, well, you're such an idiot. Why would you spend $10,000 on a wedding and marry a girl? I'm trying to get you to find Jesus. I listened to that good need inside, a hope for rest. And I stored away in my mind, Kat is tired and looking for soul rest. And I know the only place she can get true rest is in Jesus. People are self-diagnosing all the time how and where they need God if we're willing to ask questions and to listen. Ask them about their girlfriend. Ask them about their boyfriend. Ask what they like about him. They break up with their same-sex girlfriend. Don't rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and ask questions. What did you love about her? Because you're going to hear a longing for a deeper love in that. I also hear it. I hear the deeper longing, the self-diagnosis in sentences that begin with, I wish I had, or at least I have, or if only. Ugh, I got convicted about this in my own life this week. I kept saying, if only I was done with this, if only that, if only I had $1 bajillion to the glory of God. Usually every sentence that starts with these, an idol comes after that. I remember saying that to Kat as she was starting to learn more about Jesus, as she said another, if only I could get married. And I said, Kat, humbly, usually every if only ends with an idol. And the Holy Spirit helped her to see it, and she just sat back in the chair, and she realized, Slow to speak, what do you say when an LGBTQ character comes on TV? 100% of the hundreds toward the same sex are wrestling with their gender, but they just heard their BFF or their mama, their dad, or their uncle or their sister go, ugh, and they just interpreted it as you roll your eyes at me. They're looking for safe spaces to process what's going on inside. And if you're rolling your eyes, it feels like you're rolling their eyes at him. Now, some people push back and they're like, well, Lori, what do I do with my anger? I am so mad about all the LGBTQ characters. It does feel like they're just shoving it down my throat and the LGBTQ agenda. And, that's next session. We're going to talk about what to do with that. Speak as if an LGBTQ person is in the room. Just do it. Nobody suspected me. Do you know how hurt I got so many times? So many times. Deeply wounded. And it's not just me, it's hundreds of people I've talked to. Same story. We spent an average of 3 years in the closet before coming out, so let's speak respectfully, because that's what Jesus would do about all image bearers and all of our equally grody sin. Find out where you can agree. So let's say you're trying all these things. There's sometimes, like, I know you're talking with your very head to toe, bathed in a rainbow flag, cousin, friend, head of the group on campus. Just trying to, like, talk about Parks and Rec or something. Like, where can you build relational equity? Maybe don't punch each other where you're going to disagree. Let's try and build relational equity so that you can earn it to talk heart to heart so that they can hear the gospel. Last thing, Words to avoid. Homosexuals, I don't usually need to say this to this crowd, just like that's like super archaic. Maybe just use language people use. That's so gay. I took this one off my screen for a while and then it came back. Stop using this as a derogatory sentence, please. Thank you. Love the sinner, hate the sin. I know. It's kind of theologically true. I get it. God hates our sin. He loves us. I get it. But this has only been used as a weapon to throw at LGBT people. So how about we lifestyle? I hope not. It's just a stereotype. So if you're trying to say this person is in a same-sex relationship, just say they're in a same-sex relationship. Gay agenda. Can I just give you a little insider information, a little insider baseball? Those of us who wrestle with attractions towards the same sex, we make fun of you when you use this. Sorry. Because here's how we make fun. I don't make fun of you. No. But I see memes making fun of you. Because it's like, oh, here's my gay agenda for the day. And it's like in a rainbow. And I open it up and it's wake up, eat breakfast, go to work, go to bed. Not all LGBT people wake up like Pinky in the Brain. Remember Pinky in the Brain? What am I going to do today, Pinky? Try to take over the world. Not everyone who identifies LGBT has a gay agenda trying to infiltrate the world, okay? That's a stereotype. There are LGBTQ activists, but when we use this sort of language, it makes the people in your room feel ostracized. So you can just, instead of being like, oh, the gay agenda, you could just be like, oh man, I'm feeling grief over LGBTQ activists. It just feels so pervasive. Hear the language difference? Gay marriage with air quotes, it's just disrespectful to use air quotes around marriage, even though we don't believe it's God's design for marriage. There's a high cost for people who choose to marry someone of the same sex. So many come out of the church, and so when we're like, oh yeah, you and your gay marriage, it's just, I wouldn't want to hear the gospel from you. Pronouns, we already talked about it. Okay, chat with a friend time. What are you going to take away? What's one thing that I just talked about that you're like, I want to do this differently, I'm going to think differently, I want to chew on this differently, I'm going to give you a couple minutes, chat with a friend. Here. All right, guys. You are awesome. I'm having so much fun with you guys. I don't know if you could tell. We're having a good time. Do we have one more person this time around who's willing to say, hey, this is what I want to think about, do differently, study more? Would one person be willing to share that? Yeah, thank you so much. Do you share? Yes. Mm. Mm. So she said, what's your name? Lauren. Laur. The right way? Thank you. Also me, Laurie. Okay. My friend Lauren there, she said that it was helpful to hear how Kat wanted to be loved enough to be asked the hard questions. Ask the hard questions in love. Not screaming them, all caps on the internet. So thank you. That sounds like, I actually feel like there's one more person. Is there one more person who would like to share too? That sounds like, I actually feel like there's one more person. Is there one more person who would like to share too? Something different you're going to do or something that you took away today? Oh, in the way back. Thank you so much. Yeah. That's so good. Yep. Thank you. What's your name? Mike. Thanks so much for being here today, Mike. So Mike was just saying, in case you couldn't hear, he said he struggled with asking the question about the relationship and just kind of wove around it, which there's grace and redemption. You know what? God still got their number. But we can learn, right? Just because we weren't doing it maybe the ideal way before, which hopefully there's something here that's gospel-y that will help us to meet people where they're at tomorrow. So you were saying it's helpful to think about asking and just, it's not saying I love sin to say, tell me about you. Are you dating? That's not saying I love sin. That's just having a regular conversation like you would with someone who's sleeping with someone of the opposite sex. Oh, you live together. So much of my advice ends up being, be a normal person. Oh, I can? Yeah, just be normal and then preach the gospel. All right, we're going to land the plane where we started. We took off yesterday. And then again, I do have a third session that's going to help us kind of process some of our emotions. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Who's in charge? Who is responsible for this conversation? He works with us, but ultimately it's on him. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. All nations includes LGBTQ people, everyone. Baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age, who never leaves us. I say that to my kids every day before they go to school. That was cute, wasn't it? Oh, all right. I'm going to pray us out now, okay? Well, no, I'm not praying us out. I'm praying us to Ben. Pray us to Ben. Okay, I'm going to pray. Sorry, Ben. I love his dry humor. He keeps cracking me up so bad. Okay. All right, Lord, thank you so much. Thank you that all authority is yours. Thank you, God, that you partner with us to push back the darkness and usher in the light. Thank you, God. I just pray that anything that is of you would just sink into our souls today and help us to take the next right step with you. Anything that's not of you would just fall to the floor, Lord, and we just leave it here. Thank you, Lord, that you never, ever, ever leave us. In your name, amen.
Fantastic. So glad that she clarified that we were not praying to me. Never do that. For those of you that don't know, the way that Collegiate is set up is we have several directors underneath the direction of our executive director who is under the board. And today we get to hear an update from our diversity director, Alfonso Mack. So Alfonso, please come up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. How's everybody doing? How the Lord's people doing? Y'all doing all right? Doing good? Awesome. Well, I'm grateful to be here. It's actually one of these moments. I just got to confess this. This is a bittersweet moment for me being up here because I actually went and moved to Michigan. I was with H2OBG. Love my old family. They're my family over there. And I've been a part of a church plant in Michigan over the last, since January I moved. And so being here is just like bittersweet because I just miss Collegiate overall and being a part of a collegiate church. But I'm thankful to still be a part of the network to some degree as a diversity director. So I want to keep your time just real short. Let you know a little bit about the diversity team and my position and what we do. And then kind of just share a real quick update of kind of just where we're headed and some next steps that I think I'm very excited about. And so just real quick, so the diversity team got started with some conversations that probably, Jay, you might be able to correct me on this, maybe 4 years ago, I think at this point. I think it was before the pandemic we were having conversations, just like about the hope of the gospel for all people on our college campuses. Right, there's tons of people from different people groups that need Jesus just as much as we do. And it's like, so how can we as a network and a group of churches just be focused on intentionally reaching those people with the gospel? That's how it kind of got started. And so then we started thinking about the network and it's like, okay, then so what do we want to do if we're going to create this team in this position? And we came up with 3 foundations of things that we wanted to do. It's to have a clear biblical foundation that articulates the value of all nations and all peoples. That was like the first objective. The second is to have a humble, cross-cultural understanding and engagement to lead well. It's like I'm on a college campus, how do I lead well and understand the people that I'm leading around who are different from me? And then the last one is to see BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, thriving in collegiate churches. Okay, so those are our 3 objectives and core things that we've been wanting to do. In this season, what we are doing is focusing on the third one. And so the diversity team and myself, we have decided that we're going to actually be starting a cohort at the beginning of the year for BIPOC staff. It's the Collegiate BIPOC Development Cohort. And the purpose of this cohort is to support, care, and bring encouragement, as well as equip for long-term ministry in Collegiate, and then also equip BIPOC staff for missional living out of their identity in Christ. So we'll be looking to start that in January of this year, January 8th, if you can mark your calendars, if you're interested in that. We'll probably have about 7 meetings over the course of just the spring semester, meeting 7 times, probably every other couple weeks or something like that. I don't have the full calendar on me, but I do have some sheets of paper over there if you're interested. And so we'll be meeting via Zoom as well. And then the one thing we'll be doing in that is just discussing just various topics, just like cultural intelligence. How do I understand the world around me and who I am? But how do I interact with other people? We'll talk about MTD, cross-cultural evangelism. And then also, how do we last long in ministry? And with the cohort, one of the things that we thought would just be really good, I think, even just for our churches, is every BIPOC staff to have a support leader from their church, whether it's their manager or high-level pastor or leader, whoever it may be, to kind of sponsor and walk with them through the process. So really that person will be someone that you would just report back to and just share about the experience, what you're learning. So it doesn't just stay with you, but it's also a part of helping equip your church for the long haul so that there's good conversations being had around those things. So if you know of a BIPOC staff who might not be here, or if you are one in this room and you're interested, you can come and find me afterwards. I have a QR code for like an application to kind of just sign up. The deadline for that will be December 20th. It's a Friday. Just to get that application in, would love to be a part of walking with you in this journey and being in the Collegiate Church. I'm so thankful that I have this opportunity to be here and to be able to share. So bless you all. Ben, you can take this mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. Okay, breakouts are technically supposed to start in 2 minutes. We're not gonna give you only 2 minutes, but we would love to start them as quickly as we can. So when we dismiss you, if you need to use the bathroom,